All right, happy Thursday. We've got a really dope bell ringer today. This question is tricky, okay? Even I had to look at it a couple of times, but it's a really good question. Wish I wrote it myself, but alas, I did not. So let's dive into it, really break it down, shall we? Okay, so the question says, both parent plants in the diagram have two genes that determine their seed color. So we have a yellow pea seed. I know, look how fancy I'm getting with these bell ringers, you guys. A yellow pea seed and a green pea seed in black. So our parent generation here, we've got a yellow seed mixing with a black seed, and all of their offspring are yellow, because you can tell it's labeled as white, so it's yellow. So the question asks, why are all the offspring of the first generation yellow? What's happening there? Okay, so actually to answer this question, we have to really, really break this thing down. We've got to do some Punnett squares, okay? But first, it's talking about alleles, okay? What is an allele? Remember, an allele is just a version of a trait, okay? So in this scenario, we have version 1, which is yellow, and version 2, which is green. Now, we know when it comes to alleles, the two versions, we have either dominant or recessive. And again, dominant we represent with a capital letter, recessive with a lowercase letter, okay? So you don't just have one little allele for your traits, you have one allele from both parents, right? Because you get half of your traits from one parent, half of them from the other. So those two alleles combine to form your genotype. Okay? So if you have a dominant genotype, well, let's just say this. There are 3 possible genotypes for a trait that you can have. You can have 2 dominant alleles, a dominant and recessive allele, and 2 recessive alleles. So the thing about the genotypes is they determine what you are actually going to see in the phenotype. And again, the phenotype is the actual trait that you can see with your pretty little eye, okay? So as long as you have just one dominant allele present in the genotype, you are going to see the dominant phenotype. Now, where this question is so tricky is they don't tell us which one's dominant. They don't tell us if yellow is the dominant trait or if green is the dominant trait. And that's kind of what the question's asking anyway. So we have to figure that out ourselves. And as long as there's no capital letters present, as long as they are both lowercase, you're going to see the recessive phenotype. Okay, so the thing about this question is, like I said, they don't tell us the genotypes, but if you look in the parent generation, one has the dominant genotype and one has the recessive, because we're looking at 2 different traits being represented. If they were both yellow or both green, that wouldn't really tell us that much. So since we have 2 separate, and again, we're looking right here, 2 separate phenotypes, yellow and green, we know that one is recessive, one is dominant. So the good thing about recessive is, and let me highlight it here, the good thing about recessive is there's really only one option of what that genotype can be, because it's the 2 lowercase a's. So we know for sure whichever parent is recessive, again, we're not totally sure which one is yet, whichever parent is recessive is going to have those 2 lowercase a's. Now, since the other one is dominant, we know that there are 2 possibilities of what their genotype can be. They could have 2 capital A's or a capital A and a lowercase a. So what we are going to do is we're actually going to do the Punnett square for both options. And again, the Punnett square, what is the point of the Punnett square? The Punnett square helps us see what genotypes the offspring of 2 parents could have. So up here we have one parent for the recessive, and over here we have the other parent, either the mother or the father, for the dominant trait. So we need to figure out what is the genotype of the dominant parent, because that's going to determine what all of these children look like. Now, if you're thinking, why does that matter to answer the question? Bear with me. It's all going to become so clear in like 2 seconds, okay? So let's do the Punnett square real quick. Remember to fill in each box. You look directly to the left and directly above and just fill in what is directly beside and above it is. Okay, so there is that Punnett square. And over here, there is that Punnett square. Okay, so looking at these Punnett squares, we're going to highlight which of these offspring represent the dominant trait and which one represent the recessive trait. So if you look right here, we've got capital A, lowercase a. Again, as long as there's just one capital A, you're going to have that dominant trait represented, and that is in every single box in this Punnett square. So 100% of these are going to be dominant. So let's write 100% dominant, or they are all going to look the same, okay? Over here, we've got, there's one dominant because there's one capital letter, but down here, we've got 2 lowercase letters. So these are 2 recessive. So here we're going to have like 50% of the offspring have the dominant trait and 50% with the recessive trait. Now, why did I just go through all of that? Look at the first generation up here. So these are the offspring. Do they look like they are all 100% one trait? Or are they kind of half yellow, half green? They're all 100% the same trait, right? So we know that this must not be the proper Punnett square. This is not going to be the genotype for the dominant parent. So let's actually, hold on. Is it gonna let me do it? Beautiful, look at that magic. Let's just shrink that, put that away, cross it out, no thank you. So basically the genotypes of our parents are big A for the dominant, and little a. And all of the children, all of the offspring, their genotypes are big A, little a. So this is exactly what we need to answer the question. And we know that all of the children have yellow pea seeds. Okay, so let's take a look. Question A, or choice A, says all of the first generation, again right here, first generation genotypes have 2 recessive alleles. That's not true because we have one capital A. So we have one dominant, one recessive. So it's not going to be choice A. Choice B says all of the first generation genotypes have 2 dominant alleles. Again, not true. We've got a lowercase a, which is recessive. If you look at choice C, it says yellow pea color allele is dominant to green. This is going to be it because look, all of the offspring are yellow, right? They're all yellow, and that they have a dominant trait. So we know, based off this genotype, the dominant trait is being expressed because it has that capital letter. And since they're all yellow, the dominant trait must be yellow. So absolutely. D is going to be incorrect because one parent passed on the yellow color allele, or the dominant, but one parent only passed on lowercase letters, so that recessive. So they both did not pass on yellow. One of them passed on the green, but yellow is dominant, so it won out. Ooh, that's a lot that goes on in that question. There's a lot of scribbles going on here, so if you're still confused, please hit me up. I'll walk you through it even slower. But if you've got it, please write down C and why it is correct. And yeah, see you later.